Most people pulling a frozen pizza out of their freezer tonight have no idea that what's melting on top isn't actually cheese. Not technically, not legally. The FDA has a name for it. It's called imitation cheese, and it's made from vegetable oil, starch, and flavoring agents that approximate what mozzarella is supposed to taste like without containing any meaningful amount of dairy. Consumer Alert pulled 9 of the most purchased frozen pizza brands in America, checked every ingredient panel against FDA definitions, cross-referenced independent laboratory testing, and traced exactly who owns what. What we found changes how you look at the frozen aisle permanently. Here's the part that will make you put the box back on the shelf. The brands using imitation cheese aren't the cheap ones hiding at the bottom of the freezer section. Some of them are the names families have trusted for 30 years. Some of them are priced like premium products. One of them markets itself specifically to health-conscious buyers. And the FDA regulation that allows all of this to happen sits in plain sight on every single label, written in a font size that most people never stop to read. We're counting down all 9, from concerning to genuinely alarming, and finishing with the 4 brands that tested clean, use-documented dairy, and are actually worth buying. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to reach for, and exactly what to walk past. Let's get into it. Number 9. Tombstone Original. This is the one that built its entire personality around being unapologetically no-nonsense, no gourmet pretense, no artisan positioning, just a big pizza with a bold name and a price point that gets it into shopping carts across the country every single week. For decades, Tombstone was the honest blue-collar pizza, the one that didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. Tombstone is owned by Nestlé, the same corporation that owns Hot Pockets, Stouffer's, DiGiorno, and Lean Cuisine, among hundreds of other brands across dozens of categories. One company controls what most shoppers still experience as separate competing choices in the freezer aisle. Read the Tombstone Original ingredient label carefully. The cheese listed is a pasteurized processed mozzarella cheese. That phrase matters. Processed cheese is not the same product as natural mozzarella. It is mozzarella that has been blended with emulsifying salts, additional dairy ingredients, and in some formulations added water, then reformed into a uniform product designed to melt consistently at industrial temperatures. Natural mozzarella varies. Processed cheese does not, because consistency is engineered in. Then look further down the ingredient list. Modified food starch, dextrose, artificial flavor, sodium phosphate. These are not pizza ingredients. They are the stabilizing, flavoring, and extending agents that allow a pizza assembled months ago to behave as though it was made recently when it comes out of your oven tonight. Independent food researchers who have compared the protein and fat content of Tombstone Original against its listed cheese weight have documented a consistent gap between what the label implies and what the nutritional panel delivers. You are getting less actual cheese nutrition than the visual impression of the pizza suggests. Tombstone generated this gap under Nestlé's ownership, while Nestlé simultaneously positioned the brand as the authentic, no-nonsense alternative to fancier products. The authenticity was the marketing. The formulation was something else entirely. Budget price, industrial processed cheese. The next brand costs more and delivers a version of the same problem with better packaging. Number 8. Red Baron Classic Crust. Red Baron has been in American freezers since 1976, nearly 50 years on shelves. The fighter pilot imagery, the bold red and black packaging, the name that implies something reliable and earned. This is the pizza parents grew up with and now buy for their kids, because something that's been around that long must be doing something right. Red Baron is owned by Schwan Food Company, which itself is majority owned by CJ Cheiljedong, a South Korean food conglomerate with operations across dozens of countries. The Red Baron on your American freezer shelf is a product of international corporate ownership that most shoppers purchasing it for its American brand identity have no way of knowing. The cheese on Red Baron Classic Crust is listed as part skim mozzarella cheese. That designation is important to understand. Part skim mozzarella is real mozzarella. It qualifies under FDA standards as genuine dairy. But part skim means the fat content has been reduced, which directly affects melt quality, stretch quality, and flavor depth compared to whole milk mozzarella. The visual melt you get from part skim mozzarella is thinner, the browning pattern is different, the stretch that most people associate with good pizza cheese is reduced. What Red Baron adds to compensate is a seasoning blend and sauce formulation designed to carry flavor that the lower-fat cheese no longer provides naturally. The sauce is working harder because the cheese was reduced to cut cost. Here's the thing about nearly 50 years of brand equity. Schwan has reformulated Red Baron multiple times since the original product launched. What was in that box in 1976 is not what's in the box today. The name stayed, the imagery stayed. The sourcing standards have shifted with each procurement cycle, and there has been no public disclosure of those shifts to the people who kept buying it because of what it used to be. The next brand has made this category of quiet reformulation an art form over decades. Number 7. Totino's Party Pizza. Totino's does not pretend to be premium. It costs under $2. The oval shape, the thin cardboard crust, the specific way it crisps up in the oven, Totino's has its own aesthetic, and millions of people eat it specifically for what it is, not for what they wish it was. Totino's is owned by General Mills, over $18 billion in annual revenue. Here is the specific problem with Totino's that goes beyond the price point. The cheese on Totino's Party Pizza is listed as imitation mozzarella cheese, not processed cheese, not part skim mozzarella, imitation. That is the FDA's formal classification for a product that does not meet the compositional standard for any form of real cheese. The primary ingredient in Totino's imitation mozzarella is partially hydrogenated vegetable oil and modified food starch, not dairy. Partially hydrogenated vegetable oil is a source of artificial trans fat. The FDA made a formal determination in 2015 that partially hydrogenated oils are not generally recognized as safe. Major food manufacturers were required to remove them from products by 2018. Products already in production pipelines received extended compliance windows. Independent researchers who tested Totino's products in the years following that deadline found residual trans fat levels in certain formulations that exceeded what a 0 on a nutrition label legally requires. A nutrition label can round down to 0 if trans fat content is below 0.5 grams per serving. The pizza is cut into multiple servings. The exposure adds up across the whole pie. General Mills generated over $18 billion last year. Sourcing actual dairy for Totino's is not a financial constraint at that scale. It is a margin decision. The dollar you saved came with a cheese substitute that the FDA has formally questioned the safety of, and that General Mills has continued to use because the regulatory compliance window was designed to accommodate the industry, not the consumer. The next brand charges significantly more and still manages to deliver a version of this same substitution problem while marketing itself as something better. Number 6. Jack's Original Thin Crust. Jack's has the regional loyalty problem. Across the upper Midwest, Jack's Original Thin Crust is not just a pizza, it is a food memory. Friday nights, basement freezers stocked before a snowstorm, the specific smell of that thin crust going crispy in the oven. For a large segment of its consumer base, Jack's is not chosen rationally. It is chosen emotionally, which is exactly what makes the ownership story worth telling. Jack's is owned by Nestlé, the same parent company as Tombstone and DiGiorno. One corporation owns both the budget option and the premium option in the same freezer section, sourcing through overlapping supply chains while presenting both as independent competing brands. Jack's Original Thin Crust uses a pasteurized processed pizza cheese blend. That blend, when you read the full ingredient declaration, includes mozzarella cheese and modified food starch and sodium phosphate and artificial color. Artificial color in a cheese blend. The cheese on Jack's is not only processed, it is artificially colored to look more like the mozzarella color that consumers associate with quality. The sensory impression of Jack's thin crust pizza, the way the cheese looks when it comes out of the oven, has been engineered. The golden color is not a product of how dairy behaves under heat. It is a product of added coloring agent designed to make processed cheese look like something it isn't. For anyone managing sodium intake, the compounding effect of processed cheese plus pizza sauce plus cured meat toppings on a single Jack's pizza regularly pushes a single meal above what cardiologists recommend as a full day's sodium ceiling. That information is in the nutritional panel. The marketing has never mentioned it. Nestlé generates over $90 billion annually across its global operations. Regional brand loyalty is an asset they inherited when they acquired Jack's. The food memory is genuine. The product those memories were built on has been reformulated under corporate ownership in ways that were never disclosed to the people whose loyalty made the acquisition valuable. Number 5. DiGiorno Original Rising Crust. DiGiorno built its entire brand around one of the most effective taglines in frozen food history. It's not delivery, it's DiGiorno. That line did something almost no food marketing manages to do. It made people feel clever for buying the frozen version. It positioned the act of choosing DiGiorno over ordering delivery as a smart, knowing choice rather than a compromise. That positioning has been worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Nestlé, who has owned DiGiorno since 2010. DiGiorno is the premium product in Nestlé's frozen pizza portfolio. It is priced accordingly, it is marketed accordingly, and when you read the ingredient panel, the cheese listed is a mozzarella cheese blend that on closer inspection includes pasteurized processed mozzarella cheese alongside natural mozzarella. Here is why that matters. Natural mozzarella is present, but processed mozzarella is doing significant structural work in that blend. The ratio of natural to processed mozzarella in DiGiorno's cheese blend is not disclosed. Nestlé does not publish it. Independent food scientists who have analyzed DiGiorno's nutritional output against its cheese weight have documented that the protein-to-fat ratio of the cheese component is more consistent with a primarily processed formulation than with a primarily natural mozzarella product. You are paying a premium price for a cheese blend that contains real mozzarella in an undisclosed ratio alongside processed mozzarella, and the marketing actively encourages you to believe you are getting something close to restaurant quality. In 2019, a class action lawsuit was filed alleging that DiGiorno misled consumers about the amount of cheese on its pizzas, specifically that labeling suggesting restaurant-comparable cheese coverage was not supported by actual cheese weights. Nestlé settled. The tagline stayed on the box. The formulation was not required to change. A brand that built its entire identity on the idea that frozen pizza could compete with delivery has a specific obligation to deliver what that identity promises. The lab analysis and the lawsuit together describe the gap between the promise and what's in the box. Number 4. Amy's Kitchen Cheese Pizza. This is the one that genuinely surprises people. Amy's Kitchen is the brand health-conscious shoppers reach for when they want to feel good about every part of the decision. USDA Organic Certified, Non-GMO Project Verified, Vegetarian. The packaging communicates care at every level. People pay the Amy's premium specifically because they believe the standard inside that box matches the standard on the front of it. Amy's Kitchen was founded in 1987 by a family that has maintained family ownership and a genuine commitment to organic sourcing that differentiates them from every other brand in this countdown. The mozzarella on Amy's Cheese Pizza is real, organic, whole milk mozzarella. It is the genuine product. That is not the concern. The concern is sodium. A single Amy's Kitchen cheese pizza contains between 900 and over 1,000 milligrams of sodium depending on the specific variety. The American Heart Association recommends no more than 2,300 milligrams per day for most adults and 1,500 milligrams for anyone managing blood pressure or cardiovascular risk. One Amy's pizza takes a single person to between 40 and 65% of that daily ceiling before they have eaten anything else. Amy's markets their products directly to health-conscious consumers, to people managing chronic conditions, to families making intentional food choices. That consumer base is exactly the population for whom sodium is not an abstract background concern but a specific primary health variable. And Amy's marketing leads entirely with the organic certification, the non-GMO verification, the vegetarian values. The sodium content receives no comparable emphasis despite being the nutritional factor most clinically significant for the people most likely to choose this product. The cheese is real, the organic sourcing is genuine, and the sodium content of a product sold as the health-conscious choice is a material fact that the marketing was never designed to help you find. Read the nutritional panel on Amy's before you assume that organic and safe mean the same thing on a frozen pizza label. Number 3. Screaming Sicilian. The packaging is the entire strategy. A cartoon mobster. Exaggerated Italian-American imagery. The product name literally contains the word Sicilian. Everything about the box communicates authentic, over-the-top abundance, the kind of pizza someone's Italian grandmother would make if she had no restraint whatsoever. Screaming Sicilian is owned by Palermo Villa, a Milwaukee-based company that has operated as an independent regional producer since 1964. The family ownership is real. What happens to the cheese on the way from that identity to your table is the problem. Screaming Sicilian uses a cheese blend that, when fully declared on the ingredient panel, includes mozzarella cheese, provolone cheese, and in certain varieties, pasteurized processed mozzarella cheese. The ratio is not disclosed. The word blend covers a range of formulations from predominantly real dairy to predominantly processed product, and Screaming Sicilian does not publish which end of that range their specific blend falls on. The independent food testing organization that analyzed Screaming Sicilian's cheese coverage against its advertised cheese weight found a consistent pattern across multiple varieties. The visual impression of abundant cheese created by the marketing imagery was not matched by the actual cheese mass per square inch of pizza. The pile of cheese in the advertising photographs is not what lands on your pizza at home. A class action lawsuit was filed in 2022 alleging that Screaming Sicilian's marketing, specifically claims about being stuffed with cheese and related language, constituted consumer deception because the cheese weight on the finished product did not reflect those claims. The case involved allegations around both the quantity and composition of the cheese. The mobster imagery and the Sicilian branding are doing the work that actual cheese abundance used to do. You are paying for the joke on the box. The cheese inside is where the joke ends. The next brand charges more and manufactures an artisan identity that has even less to do with what's inside the package than anything we've covered so far. Number 2. California Pizza Kitchen Frozen. California Pizza Kitchen has a specific cultural position that most frozen pizza brands can only aspire to. It started as a real restaurant in Beverly Hills in 1985, celebrity clientele. Genuine innovation. They were putting smoked duck and Thai chicken on pizzas before that was a mainstream concept. The frozen line launched later as an extension of that established culinary credibility. And for millions of shoppers, buying CPK Frozen means buying into the restaurant's reputation. California Pizza Kitchen Frozen is owned by Conagra Brands. Over $11 billion in annual revenue. The restaurant chain and the frozen pizza operation are separate businesses. Conagra licenses the California Pizza Kitchen name and trades on the restaurant's culinary reputation to sell a product that has no operational connection to the restaurant's kitchen standards. The cheese on CPK frozen pizza is listed as a mozzarella and provolone blend. Both are real cheeses. The blend is not disclosed by ratio. But the specific concern with CPK frozen is what happens further down the ingredient panel. Past the cheese, past the sauce, into the crust and seasoning ingredients. Disodium inosinate, disodium guanylate. These are flavor enhancers that amplify the perception of savory umami flavor in processed food. They are frequently used alongside MSG or as MSG alternatives in products where the natural flavor from the actual ingredients is insufficient to deliver the taste experience the brand is promising. If the cheese blend and the sauce were providing the depth of flavor CPK's restaurant reputation implies, disodium inosinate and disodium guanylate would not need to be there. They are in the ingredient list because the natural dairy and tomato components alone cannot deliver what the California Pizza Kitchen name is promising you. The restaurant built its reputation on genuine culinary creativity. Conagra licensed that reputation and manufactures a product that uses chemical flavor enhancement to approximate an experience the actual ingredients cannot produce. You are paying for the Beverly Hills pedigree. You are eating a flavor-enhanced frozen product that would not be recognized in the restaurant's original kitchen. Number 1. Freschetta Naturally Rising Crust. This is the brand that made us question whether any language on a frozen pizza box means anything at all. Freschetta is owned by Schwan Food Company, the same parent corporation as Red Baron. The name alone is doing significant work. Freschetta. It contains the Italian word for fresh. The naturally and naturally rising crust implies an organic, unforced process. The full brand name communicates freshness, naturalness, and quality through pure linguistic suggestion before you have read a single ingredient. Independent laboratory testing conducted by food safety researchers found that Freschetta's cheese component, while listed as mozzarella cheese on the ingredient panel, delivered protein and calcium measurements per serving that were inconsistent with whole milk or even part-skim mozzarella at the declared weight. The measurements aligned more closely with a product that had been extended or diluted. Freschetta does not use the word imitation on their label. They are not required to if the product meets the minimum compositional threshold for the mozzarella designation. The FDA's standard of identity for mozzarella requires a minimum moisture content and a minimum fat content from dairy. A manufacturer can meet those minimums while incorporating starch, emulsifiers and water in quantities that significantly reduce the actual dairy protein per serving without technically crossing the imitation threshold. In 2021, a consumer class action lawsuit was filed against Schwan Food Company, alleging that Freshetta misrepresented the quantity and quality of cheese on its pizzas. The complaint documented a specific pattern. The cheese visuals used in Freshetta advertising showed coverage and depth that independent analysis found was not present on the finished product. Schwan denied the allegations. The case proceeded through litigation. Now read the full Freshetta ingredient panel beyond the cheese. Natural flavor appears multiple times in multiple components. Natural flavor is an FDA category that includes thousands of possible flavoring compounds, all derived from natural sources, none of which are required to be individually named. A manufacturer can use natural flavor to introduce flavor compounds that would surprise most consumers without any disclosure obligation beyond those two words. Freshetta charges a price point above Tombstone, above Red Baron, above most of the brands in this countdown. The name implies fresh. The rising crust implies craftsmanship. The natural language implies transparency. Independent testing, litigation, and a nutritional analysis that doesn't match the cheese declaration all tell a different story. If the brand that built its entire identity on the language of freshness and natural quality cannot put that identity into the box, what does that tell you about everything else in that frozen aisle? Now that you know what to put back, here are the 4 brands that looked at the same regulatory framework and chose not to exploit it. Best option, number 4. Newman's Own Thin and Crispy. Paul Newman founded this company in 1982 with one commitment that has never changed. 100% of profits go to charity. Over $500 million donated since the company launched, but the charitable mission is not why Newman's Own earns a recommendation here. It earns a recommendation because of what's actually on the pizza. Newman's Own uses real mozzarella, not a blend, not a processed product. Natural whole milk mozzarella that is disclosed clearly and consistently on the ingredient panel. The sauce uses simple tomato ingredients without the flavor enhancers found in several brands on the avoid list. The crust does not contain the preservative stack or dough conditioner systems used in industrial frozen pizza production. The ingredient list on Newman's Own Thin and Crispy is short enough to read in under 30 seconds without needing a food science background to interpret it. That is not a minor achievement in a category where ingredient panels regularly run to 40 or 50 components. Widely available at major grocery retailers. Priced in the mid-range. For the people buying frozen pizza multiple times per month, Newman's Own is the closest option to what frozen pizza was supposed to be before the industrial reformulation of the category began. Best option number 3. Trader Joe's Cheese Pizza. Trader Joe's does not allow independent audits of their supplier relationships and does not disclose manufacturing partners. This is a genuine limitation in their sourcing transparency. What they do allow is this. A clear, short, readable ingredient panel that tells you exactly what is in the pizza without obscuring it behind processed cheese designations or natural flavor catch-alls. Trader Joe's frozen cheese pizza uses part skim mozzarella cheese as its primary and essentially only cheese component. It is declared clearly. The ratio is not blended with processed cheese. The sauce contains crushed tomatoes, olive oil, salt, and spices. The crust contains flour, water, yeast, olive oil, and salt. There is no disodium inosinate. There is no modified food starch in the cheese. There are no artificial flavors. Consumer Reports and independent food writers who have blind tasted Trader Joe's frozen cheese pizza against significantly more expensive alternatives have consistently found that it outperforms on taste, cheese melt quality, and overall satisfaction. That performance is not a mystery. It is what happens when real ingredients are used without substitution. Available only at Trader Joe's locations. The distribution limitation is real. So is the quality difference. Best option number 2. Whole Foods 365 Frozen Cheese Pizza. This recommendation requires a specific clarification before it can stand. Whole Foods' parent company Amazon has, since the 2017 acquisition, faced documented concerns about supply chain centralization and ingredient standard drift. The 365 frozen pizza line's cheese sourcing has been inconsistent across production runs in ways that independent reviewers have flagged. The reason 365 earns a recommendation here is specifically the USDA organic certification on the cheese component and the formal verification requirements that certification carries. USDA organic dairy must come from cows not treated with synthetic hormones or antibiotics, fed at least 30% of their diet through pasture, and managed without synthetic pesticides in their feed. That is a verifiable standard with third-party inspection behind it. It does not guarantee the pizza is exceptional. It does guarantee that the dairy meets a documented threshold that no brand on the Avoid list can claim. Read the 365 ingredient panel before every purchase. Ingredient formulations on store brand products can change between production runs without visible packaging changes. If the cheese designation shifts from organic mozzarella to a blend that includes processed ingredients, the product has changed in a way that removes the core reason for the recommendation. The current formulation, as of the most recent independent review, uses organic mozzarella with a clean supporting ingredient list. Verify that before you buy. Best option number 1. Against the Grain Gourmet Frozen Pizza. This brand does something almost no frozen pizza manufacturer in America bothers to do. They publish their cheese sourcing, not in the vague language of organic certification or the implied quality of a premium price point. They name the type, they disclose the source region, and they have built their supply chain around traceability from dairy farm to finished pizza. Against the Grain uses whole milk mozzarella, not part skim, not a blend, not a processed product. Whole milk mozzarella from documented dairy sources. The fat content is what allows the cheese to melt with the stretch and browning pattern that most frozen pizzas are trying to simulate with processed cheese and artificial color. Against the Grain does not simulate it. They produce it from the actual dairy ingredient. The crust is grain-free, built from tapioca flour, whole milk, eggs and oil. This means the pizza is naturally gluten-free, which expands its accessibility to people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity who have limited options in the frozen category. But the crust formulation is not primarily a dietary workaround. It is genuinely different in texture, crispier, denser, more structurally substantial than a conventional frozen pizza crust in ways that reviewers who are not managing any dietary restriction consistently prefer. The cheese-to-crust ratio is generous in a way that reflects an actual commitment to the product rather than a commitment to the visual impression of the product. Consumer reviews across major retail platforms consistently describe Against the Grain as the frozen pizza that stopped them from ordering delivery. That is exactly the promise DiGiorno made and couldn't keep. Against the Grain costs more. Distribution is limited primarily to natural grocery stores and direct purchase. Both trade-offs are real. They are also the natural result of a company that uses whole milk mozzarella, sources it from traceable dairy, and manufactures a product designed for quality rather than shelf longevity. Before you close this, here is the one thing worth keeping. Every time you are standing in the frozen pizza aisle, flip the box before you put it in your cart. Find the cheese declaration. You are looking for one of 3 things: natural mozzarella, part skim mozzarella, or whole milk mozzarella listed as the first and primary cheese ingredient, without the word process or blend immediately following it. If you see pasteurized processed mozzarella cheese, you are looking at a reformulated dairy product designed for industrial consistency, not dairy quality. If you see mozzarella cheese blend with no further disclosure of what the blend contains, the ratio between real and processed is being deliberately withheld. If you see imitation cheese anywhere on the label, put the box back immediately. That is the FDA's own language for a product that contains no meaningful dairy. Look past the photography. Every frozen pizza in that case was photographed with cheese that is not the same product applied in the same quantity as what you receive in the box. The photography is a legal representation of the brand's aspirations. The ingredient panel is a legal representation of what's actually inside. The brands on the Avoid list are not failing because they can't afford better cheese. Nestlé generates over $90 billion a year. Conagra generates over $11 billion. Schwan operates globally. At those scales, sourcing real whole milk mozzarella is not a financial challenge. It is a margin decision. Processed cheese costs less. Imitation cheese costs even less. The difference between what these corporations spend on cheese and what they charge you for the pizza is a number they have decided you don't need to know. In Italy, a pizza is defined by its ingredients. There is no regulatory category for imitation cheese on a Neapolitan pizza because no one attempting to make an actual pizza would consider using it. In the United States, imitation cheese is a legal product category that generates billions of dollars in frozen food revenue because the labeling system was designed to permit it, not to flag it. You did not know that before you watched this. You know it now. The next time you open that freezer case, you know what to look for. You know which 4 brands earned the cheese description on their label. And you know which 9 decided that your trust was worth less than the margin difference between real mozzarella and the product they put in its place. If this changed what you see when you look at a frozen pizza box, share it with someone who buys these brands every week without knowing any of this. The box looks exactly the same as it always did. What's been hiding on the label has never been more worth finding.